What's going on, guys? Fun with Eyes back again, and I think it's time for a good old-fashioned budget Kershaw review, which I seem to have done so many in the past. I think I'm finally getting back to my roots. Now, this was a knife that I got quite some time ago. I've really been trying to carry it and get my feelings straight about it because I've seen a lot of different things throughout the knife world in YouTube. I've seen a whole lot of people saying this is such an excellent knife, other ones saying it's just plagued with issues, and I seem to be landing somewhere in the middle. And I wanted to carry it more and more to be sure of how I felt, and I think I'm finally there. Now, this is the Kershaw Fraxion. That's the Kershaw 1160. We'll come back to that Onzo design in just a minute. But if this is any inclination on where this review is going, Kershaw released some different variations of this model in 2018. They've basically extended it to different colors both in the handle, and they now offer a satin blade, when this, I believe, in 2017 was the only coloration you could get. Black G10 with the kind of CF overlays and a black wash blade. And I think it's fairly attractive, I mean, just from an aesthetic standpoint, but they've come out now with OD green G10, tan G10, and they're also offering a satin blade. And the reason that's surprising to me is you usually do things like that within a knife model that is successful. I mean, hence the Spyderco Paramilitary 2 or the Native, or the Endura, those kind of knives from Spyderco, or how about the 392 series from ZT. Those knives are extremely popular, and I think for good reason, and they've come out with a whole bunch of different flavors to reflect that, so everybody can get the style that they want. This knife, the Kershaw Fraxion, I did not think, judging from my own experience and pocket time with it, that it deserved any more attention than one color variation. In fact, I thought this might have been a discontinued model. Let me tell you why that is. So let's get some specs out of the way, and we'll start from the blade end. So the blade length on this guy is 2 3/4 inches. The handle length is right at 4 inches, and the overall length is, of course, 6 3/4 inches. Blade thickness on this guy is just under 1/8 of an inch at 0.11 inches, and your handle thickness is only 0.41. So a small knife in almost every respect, and it only weighs 1.9 ounces. This thing is ultra light just because of the build, the design. I think its slimness kind of adds to that as well. It's a great kind of smaller EDC knife, and you guys know that I like knives more in this size category of this one. Something a little bigger, not because I need it, just because I like it. It fills my hand, got a little bit of meat to it. But I thought I needed this knife. When I saw the I believe this is a 2017 release. When I saw the lineup from Kershaw, I wanted a budget Kershaw that I could take with me traveling, because I do travel, I don't want to say quite a bit for work, but often enough that I'm finding that I need a knife with a blade under 3 inches, and this fit the bill. A couple other selling points for me was the fact that it was a Jens Onzo design. I don't want to say Jens Onzo is my favorite designer, because I don't think he is. I don't think I have one, but he did design my favorite knife, the one you just saw, the ZT-0220. And in fact, to me, they look fairly similar. Man, that just dwarfs that thing. As from a silhouette perspective, they kind of got that, I don't know, trapezoidal shape. I mean, fairly similar blade. I just saw a little bit of similarities there. Same designer, and this is running on KVT ball bearings. This isn't a speed safe or assisted opening Kershaw, which was kind of a selling point for me. I've had a lot of those in the past. I've liked some, loved some, and I've hated some. But KVT usually treats me well, and this has a good action. And we'll also come back to that. But those selling points really pushed me towards this knife, and I don't want to say it completely let me down, but this thing has not reached its full potential. That's why I'm so surprised Kershaw has released more models of it, because I think there's some room for improvement here before just releasing different colors. So on the blade end here, this is 8CR13 MOV. You can see there it is a Chinese Kershaw, Kai patented on that side, and Kershaw here. Now the black wash looks a little bit different from the ones I've seen in the past. There's a little bit less wash to it, if you will. It's not quite a stone wash. It's kind of a gray coating, but it looks decent. Has a hollow grind on this fairly straightforward blade. Now behind the edge is nice and thin. They did a kind of a deep hollow grind here, starting about 3/4 of the way up. Kind of a two-piece wedge, if you will, on top, giving you a nice thin tip. I think it performs pretty well as an EDC blade. I mean, all the cutting that I did with it, it's not an ideal length for everything, but as far as a compact blade, I don't think I could ask for a whole lot more. Now, this was something I was a little concerned about, though, when I had the blade, is that my blade is actually bent just ever so slightly. I think you guys can see that right here. The tip is kind of skewing off to the right. And I had to be sure that that wasn't me, that I didn't, accidentally pry with the knife, do something to it that would cause that. And I actually looked back at my unboxing. That was the case when I got the knife. So this is straight from the factory with a bent blade. I don't think it affects the performance a whole lot. I don't know if it was just heat treated improperly. I don't know what happened here, but it doesn't really affect the functionality. It's just kind of an aesthetic thing that kind of bothers me. But that's what we'll go with the blade there. You guys know all about 8CR13 MOV steel just like I do. If you have any experience with some budget blades, especially from Kershaw. Now, the action here definitely a selling point. KVT ball bearings, what most ZTs use. Cage ball bearings give you nice smooth action, and this has a nice smooth action. You can hear that thing fire open and lock up every time. Works just fine to me, and actually closes pretty nicely once you get past that detent ball. You can see that's fairly smooth for a, maybe a sub $30 knife, and that's definitely not the case for a lot of budget blades, at least when this one came out. The problem is the detent on this one is a little stiff, so if you guys like softer detents, this Kershaw Fraxion is definitely not for you. It's got a very small flipper tab, with a little bit of jimping on top. I'm not in love with the shape of it. I think they could have cut it down, give you a little bit more grip area when it's open. This kind of area here, I don't know why it's so long that way, but not a huge deal. But the detent is a little stiff, but it does fire great. You can kind of push button it on such a small angled flipper like this. You kind of just press right into the pivot, it locks open, but I think it favors a light switch of sorts. I don't know why my camera is doing that, guys. Sorry. This just seems to be something with this phone. Maybe I'll have to replace it fairly soon. But action, good. Now the lock up here is an inset liner lock. You can see also black wash, just like the blade, and it's only on one side. You can see the liner in there. There's not one on the other side. Definitely not needed to have one on the other side. This is not supposed to be some sort of ultra rigid, super hard use knife, and I think this is plenty adequate for it. And surprisingly, the lockup is very solid. I've had no issues with blade play. I mean, it locks up very good for an inset liner lock, and I was kind of surprised by that because I've seen videos where that's not the case. I mean, when this is open, their engagement surface is very minimal. I mean, we're talking something like this, and the slightest tap to the spine of the blade would close it, which is kind of a liability when it comes to a smaller blade that might be a little harder to operate if you have bigger hands. So you have a large cutout for that. I don't want to say large, a fairly substantial cutout for that lock bar, and it is jimped, so it's really easy to disengage intentionally but not unintentionally. So lockup, great. I mean, the action's decent with a strong detent. The blade's decent other than the curvature at the end here. I don't know if that's a common problem. You guys will have to let me know if you have a Kershaw Fraxion of your own. Now, this is where we get to the handle here. This is G10 with a carbon fiber overlay, and I believe this is real carbon fiber in all of its extremely thin glory. I don't really care. I mean, it has a carbon fiber look. I can take it or leave it. I mean, the shape itself of the handle is fairly aesthetic. I mean, the lines of the carbon fiber are fine. It is kind of plagued by the same thing I harped the Flourish for, also a 2017 release of exact same materials. All of the edges of the G10 are very sharp. All of them. I mean, you can see there, every little edge of this knife, especially on the inside of the frame itself, is quite sharp. I mean, these edges of the carbon fiber, they're kind of there, but you can see that they've kind of skipped over that step of just kind of easily polishing off that G10 and leaving it for the user to do, which is not my favorite aspect of this knife. But it does have nice chamfers other than that on the outsides of the handle, and it's a fairly neutral grip here. It's very thin, especially it tapers towards the back, and you're gonna get a 3 or max 3.5 finger grip on this thing when you're using it. You can kind of slam that pinky on there if you're gonna really choke up on the blade, but that's where that flipper tab kind of gets in the way. I wish this flipper tab was a little shorter, but then your engagement surface is gonna be different for your lock bar, so I kind of see that's the case on that one. So smaller knife, I'd say it's around the same size as a Leek as far as grip area goes, maybe just a hair bit smaller. Let's get to the clip here. This is where things are getting a little weird again. This has got 2 standoffs, just G10, and then the 1 inset liner lock. That's where all that weight savings come from. And then you get this clip here. This is a fairly popular clip from Kershaw. I've seen it on a ton of models. I don't want to say it's a hinderer clip, but I think it's hinderer inspired. But it leaves a ton of this knife out of the pocket. I mean, we're talking a good 3/4 of an inch of only a 4-inch handle. I mean, that's almost a quarter of the knife sticking out of your pocket. It does have good tension, good enough anyway, and it is a good height off of the handle surface, so you can fit it in a wide variety of, you know, fabrics as far as pockets go. But that really perplexes me why they chose to use this clip on this knife. In a lot of respects, this is supposed to be a lightweight gentleman's EDC carry that sticks up high out of your pocket. I think Kershaw has a plethora of different clips that would have worked a little bit better on this model. And let's start pointing out a little bit of the negatives, because I haven't done that quite as much so far. You sharpening choil guys are going to freak out when you see the thickness behind the edge of where, or the lack thereof, a sharpening choil should be. You can see that it just immediately flares out, meaning that this portion of your blade is not even sharp. I mean, it's not even relatively sharp. I can put all sorts of pressure on there. That's not going to do that. So you're going to actually have to either reprofile this blade towards the end to get an entirety of 2 3/4 inches of consistent cutting edge, or Dremel that out, make your own sharpening choil so that you have a consistent edge down at the secondary bevel, which is not ideal. A lot of knives get that wrong, sure, but this one just kind of seems, I don't want to say blasphemous, but it's very blatant. It's right in your face that that's an issue. So if you couple that sharpening choil with this, I'll say subpar clip for this design, the overplayed carbon fiber G10 mix here, that's not really a whole lot of real carbon fiber. It doesn't really add a whole lot to it, because you can completely take off this overlays. It's not gonna do anything to your weight, really. I don't understand necessarily why it's there. It's probably jacking the price up by another $5, which is fairly substantial when you're talking a budget knife. The bent tip here at the top, and this is a $35, $36 knife for 1.9 ounces of, again, probably subpar materials when you're talking about budget knives nowadays. I mean, you got knives from Real Steel and Reich and all these great companies using better steels, perhaps better handle designs, better fit and finish for a little bit cheaper money. I don't know if this is a knife that I thought would be successful, and yet it is. So that's my take on the Kershaw Fraxion. I wanted to love it. I thought I had a place for it in my collection, especially since the 0220 was such a home run for me, coming from the same designer. I think it's just poorly executed. It's not a terrible knife by any means. I mean, if you guys are in love with the design, go ahead and get it. I don't think there's a whole lot functionally wrong with it. Just know that I think you're getting, I don't want to say ripped off, but you're not getting the utmost in value when it comes to budget blades, or even the Kershaw budget line. Even specifically from that company, I don't think the value's there. So thanks for watching, guys. As always, sorry this was a long one. I guess I had a lot to say about this little guy here, but look for an upcoming giveaway, perhaps, with this knife included. We'll have to see. I don't really think it's going to stay around in the collection, and I don't want to necessarily sell it. It's not going to be worth the shipping on such an inexpensive knife, or inexpensive now that I've used it, and it was a budget knife. So thanks for watching, guys, as always, and remember, have fun with your knives.